Welcome to week 2. So in week 2, we're going to be learning how to evaluate sources. And when I say evaluate sources, I mean website sources versus journal sources. So before we get into evaluating sources, let's look at a few key points. So as a researcher, there are 4 things that we really need to consider. When we're researching something, or even when we're reading a paper, we want to make sure that we are objective. And when I say objective, I mean we want to avoid any bias. So let me explain this with an example. Let's say Georgian College came to me and asked me to do a study or do research on what students think about Georgian College. Okay, so again, Georgian College came to me and asked me to do a study on what students or how students feel about Georgian College. So as a researcher, knowing that I'm employed by Georgian College and knowing that I'm going to be giving my report to Georgian College to read, I may be inclined to conclude in my paper that all students like Georgian College. Because in my mind, I would be thinking Georgian College is paying me to do this research. I want to please them, and for me to please them, I'm going to make sure that I come up with a great research paper, and I will conclude that Georgian College is well liked by all students. Now that is something called sponsor bias. That is bad, because if you tell me that you don't like Georgian College, I will twist your words, and in my research paper, I will say that you like Georgian College, not that you don't like Georgian College. And so that is something to be careful of, because some researchers may do something called sponsor bias, where a researcher has come to someone, or let's just say Crest has come to you, for example, and asked you to do a research on how effective Crest toothpaste is. Now you may feel, or I may feel, if this will happen to me, I may feel that I want to make Crest look good. Crest is paying me to do this. I'm going to make sure that Crest toothpaste works. And when I publish it, I want to make sure that it says that Crest toothpaste is effective because I want Crest to pay me and because I want to look good for Crest, so that maybe I can get another opportunity with them, another opportunity to do research with them. So sponsor bias is really, really important. We want to make sure that when we do research, we avoid any bias. We don't want to be influenced by what the sponsor is telling us to do. Again, going back to the topic about me interviewing you guys for what you think of Georgian College. Let's just say I do an interview with you and I ask you what you think of Georgian College, and let's just say hypothetically most of you have good things to say, but maybe there are several who don't have so many good things to say. So let's just say you told me a negative incident that you had. So I, as an interviewer, I respond back to you and I say, I do understand that you had this negative incident, but overall, I'm sure you feel that Georgian College is a great institution. I'm sure you feel very supported. Isn't that correct? Look at the way I worded that. I worded that question to make you answer in a positive light, right? And some researchers are very crafty, and they can twist your words to make you feel as if you're compelled to answer, yes, you do like Georgian College, or yes, Georgian College is supporting you, right? I mean, I really hope that you do feel supported in this institution, but I just want to give you an example of how bias can happen, where you may feel that your words are being twisted because the interviewer or the researcher is asking a leading question. This is what we call a leading question, where you're being forced to answer a specific way so that you can please the researcher, right? And so that's bias as well. You want to be as objective as possible. The researcher should be objective as possible. Ask very neutral questions and not ask leading questions where you're forced to answer yes or where you're forced to answer no. It should be very neutral question so that you are encouraged to answer any way you want, whether it be yes or no, and there will be no hard feelings. So be objective, avoid any bias. Aim for empirical verification, and that basically means aim for scientific evidence. Make sure that when you're doing research, if you're a researcher and you're doing research, that all the research that you're looking at there's scientific evidence. It's all backed up by science. If people just tell you something that, let's just say they might tell you, oh, there's a cure for COVID-19. As a researcher, you shouldn't believe that. You should say, if there is a cure for COVID-19, I want to see the scientific evidence. I don't want to believe anything until you show me the scientific proof. And that's what empirical verification means, that you are being shown proof. And once once you've been shown proof for scientific evidence, then you will believe that yes, there is a cure for COVID-19. So empirical verification means scientific proof. It needs to build on other scientific knowledge. So what that means is anytime you read a literature review, any paper, you've had the chance to read many papers last semester when you did your research paper in stats, and so when you read that paper, you will have noticed that right after the introduction, they do a literature review. The authors would have written a literature review. And in that literature review, what they state is they state all the previous research that they know of and what they concluded. So they're reviewing other articles about the topic. And literature review is basically when you review other articles about your topic and you just kind of summarize it and put it together in the paper. And that is considered building on scientific knowledge, where you have acknowledged that there are other research done on that topic. And now you're going to do a research on a topic different from the original topic. So if you wanted to do research on COVID-19, for example, you may have already found research online about COVID-19. And what you as a researcher would do is you would look at that research, you would summarize that research in your paper, and that summarization is called a literature review, where you're reviewing and critiquing that paper. And then you would build on it. You would add more information. You would add a different side, right, to the research. And that's what a researcher should do. So a researcher should avoid bias, should make sure that there's scientific evidence to prove their point, and should build on other scientific knowledge. So it should build on whatever other knowledge was presented on COVID-19. You're gonna build on that. And then you also need to communicate all your research clearly and honestly. Everything should be documented. Even data that you do not want to document, even data that may not support your claim, we still need to document it. Okay, it has to be as transparent. There's nothing that we should be hiding from our research. So those are the 4 basic values of a researcher. A good researcher is objective. A good researcher looks at scientific evidence. A good researcher builds on other scientific knowledge, and a good researcher communicates the research very clearly and honestly. They don't hide anything. So the next question you should ask yourself is, are you skeptic or cynic? And the way to think about this is, if you remember when you were really young, and at that time maybe you were told that Santa Claus is real, right? And you believed in Santa Claus religiously. You were excited, to get up in the morning, see your presents, and you knew it was Santa Claus that had come to deliver those presents. Let's just say one day you went to school, and when you went to school, a friend told you that Santa Claus is not real. When that friend told you that Santa Claus is not real, immediately you may not believe her. You may be cynical, where you would say, I don't believe you. Of course Santa Claus is real. I don't believe you. If you are cynical, it means that No matter what your friend tells you, let's say your friend tells you, no, I know Santa Claus is not real. I've seen my mom put the gifts out. I've seen my mom drink milk and cookies and eat the cookies. It's not Santa Claus, it's your parents that's eating the cookies, that's drinking the milk, that's putting out the gifts. As a cynical person, as someone who's cynical, you refuse to believe anything. But as a skeptical person, so if you're skeptical, now you have doubts in your mind. Now you'll go home and you'll ask your parents, Mom, Dad, is that true? I heard Santa Claus is not real. Is that true? You may go to your older sibling and ask them, is that true that Santa Claus is not real? As a skeptical person, you would say, in the back of your mind, you would say, okay, Santa Claus may not be real, but I won't believe it until I see proof. And once I receive proof, then I will change my mind and I will say, yes, that's true, Santa Claus is not real. So again, a skeptical person is a person who wants evidence to show that something exists, who wants evidence to show that Santa Claus, for example, does not exist. I want to see evidence to show that Santa Claus does not exist. Whereas a cynical person will refuse any evidence. No matter how much you persuade that person that Santa Claus is not real, that person will refuse to believe you, will refuse to see the evidence. Okay, so we as researchers or we as health professionals want to make sure that anything that we receive, anything that we read, we need to be skeptical. We need to be skeptical because we shouldn't believe everything. We need to make sure that there's evidence before we go ahead and believe what we're reading. Okay, so we need to make sure that whatever we're reading, whatever we're hearing, there has to be evidence to support it. We can't just believe anything we want. So because we're on that topic, I just want to review what you need to do for this week. So there is a discussion board activity where you have a choice of choosing 2 articles. So you could choose an article on COVID-19, or you could choose to compare an article on flossing, or you could choose to compare any article of your own. And what you're asked to do is to read the article and then answer these questions. So if you choose to do this one, you would read both. You would read the website article and the journal article, and you would answer these questions. You would first check for signs of bias. So does the author or publisher endorse or support any views that could affect objectivity? So were they sponsored to write this paper? Because if they were sponsored, if they were paid to write this, then maybe there could be bias. So see if there's any signs of bias. Assessing an argument. What was the author's claim? What was the author trying to prove in that in the website article and in the journal article? What is it that they were trying to prove? And then how did they prove it? Did they prove it by just having one person quote something? So one person's quote? Or did they have data? Did they have tables? Did they have graphs? Did they have numbers? What did they have to prove their point? Evaluating web sources. So some of the articles we read may not have an author, but some of them may. So did your document that you read or did the website that you read, does it have an author? And if there is an author, are there qualifications listed? And that's really important because you can't just have anyone with no qualifications come out and say, oh, COVID-19, I found a cure for COVID-19. And then when you look at their qualifications, they're not even a doctor or a researcher. We have to make sure that they are qualified so that they can make those claims. Currency is very important. When you look at the year that the article was published, you want to make sure that it's recent, especially within the last 5 years. If it's a really old article, maybe 20 years, then it's not so credible, right? So the more current the article, the more credible it is. And lastly, and this is actually probably the most interesting part, is what is your opinion of the article? We now know that we have to be skeptical. We can't believe anything we read. So what is your opinion of the article? In the website and also in the journal, so answer both. And then how do you think the public would perceive this? So we know that we shouldn't believe everything, but how do you think the public would perceive that article? So I look forward to reading your responses. on how you compare and contrast the website article to the journal article. And if there are any questions that you have about any of this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you.